And we're live.
Hello.
Yay.
Hi, Tina and Natchi. Nice to see you again. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Tim.
Hi. Great to be here again.
Yes. So the more observant of the viewers may have noticed that we've got Natchi back on again, but that's because he told us about his wonderful wife and their channel they do together, but mainly Tina, I think, called Indian Low Carb High Fat. I think that's what it, or LCHF. So let's start off with the obvious question. How did you end up discovering about this whole world of low carb? Low carb, high fat. I'm going to say that the wrong way around a few times. So how did you get started in that process, in that journey?
We were both overweight. Natchi was obese, and since I met him around 10 years before we started this, about 12 years before we started this, and we were trying one thing after another to lose weight. And when I met him 20 years ago, he was a bit overweight, and that he gained the pounds over the years. But I was a slim person. But over the years, I suddenly put on weight over the 5 or 6 years just before we started it. And we were trying everything. We tried different kinds of diets, the cabbage soup diet, the GM diet, exercise more, eat less. We joined gyms. We spent so much money on gymnasium memberships. We tried cycling. We tried running. And nothing seemed to work in the long run. And we were quite frustrated. We were trying, with our willpower to eat earlier in the day, drink this juice, drink this water, do this, do that, just every remedy under the sun. And it would work for a little while, but then no. And then at one point, when I went for a general checkup, the doctor said, you seem to be having diabetes. You may have to go start medication. And Natchi had...
It was like a shocker.
Yeah.
I think mine was more with Jacob, right?
Yeah.
One of our friends, this was in our mid-30s. So one of our friends called up and said, he was admitted in the hospital. And he was our age. We both are actually same age group. So he was our age. And I said, what do you mean hospital? And he said, I've had a heart attack. And I said, what? You're in your mid-30s. You can't have a heart attack. And he said, no. And then long story short, so he was getting ready for office. Then he started sweating profusely and things like that. And then he went, he's like a shuttle player. I mean, he's not overweight or anything, right? So he's like a fit guy. But still, he went and had his checkup, and he was sweating and went to the doctor. And the doctor said, you're in the middle of a heart attack. Like, you're almost there. So let's get you admitted. And they had to operate on his heart and so on. So he called me after he recovered and said, hey, Natchi, I know. And I was like really overweight at that time. So he said, you need to go get your heart checked because I don't want you to go through what I went through. So you need to go get your heart checked because I have a feeling you are in big trouble. So I said, okay, thanks, buddy. That's helpful, So I said, let's go get our checkup. So I went for a master health checkup again. Thankfully, I didn't have any of those major problems, but every single test in the hospital, when you go through doctor after doctor, right? Like ECG, blood test, and so on, the master health checkup, everybody said, hey, you are in the verge of something. If you don't do anything about your weight, you're like gone. So Tina had the diabetes, I had this. So our signals were like really clear, and we hadn't had any children by then. We were just the two of us in our marriage, into the marriage for a few years. So we said, we have to do something about this.
So we had reached a point where we absolutely had to do something about it. And I was quite afraid for him, that was 4 years ago, 2014. And I was at that point still in love with him. That's and I thought, okay, I want to live with him for a long time. I love this guy, and I want to live with him, and I don't want him to suddenly just die on me. I didn't want that happening. I wanted us to live our lives. So I said, okay, let's get this, we have to do this. And my mother has been diabetic for about 25 years. And she said, look, don't try somehow and do something about it. Don't get into this cycle of chronic medication, because once you get diabetes, then comes hypertension, then come heart problem, and then you're like this medicine, and then stronger dosage. Now one more medication. This becomes a vicious cycle, and it's never ending. So on the outside, it's like you're normal, but then your life, everything is dependent on the medication, dependent on the time. You have to look at the watch. Life is not normal anymore. So just do something about it. And I'm sorry, I talk too fast. So now
I want to. This is so critical and such an important topic, and it's something that we talk about a lot in the United States, because we are known around the world for not having the healthiest eating patterns. And what fascinates me, Tina, is that you've started a YouTube channel. You have this social media around this change of lifestyle. Will you describe exactly what it is that you have done now to change your lifestyle? And I believe it's eating and possibly exercise, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah. So what led us into this was that I was looking out for something long term. I wanted something that would last. We were on a yo-yo going up and down. So I said, we need something that lasts. So I went and researched, and then I found that by just changing the basic fuel that we send into our bodies, the food, then this can be sorted once and for all, and it's not an up and a down and roller coaster. So what we discovered during this journey was that if we change our food to low carbohydrate and high healthy fat, then this whole root cause of insulin and leptin resistance, which is what causes weight gain and all the associated problems, which is now called as metabolic syndrome. Together, they call it a syndrome. So this whole thing goes away by changing the food that we eat, because it reduces the leptin and the insulin resistance. And therefore, just that and a little, and just being fit with physical movements, like you take a walk. You don't have to do strenuous aerobic exercise and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that was what fascinated me and got me into this, because like she said, I tried everything. I mean, the amount of money I paid to the gym and not turning up after 2 days is like I could have built a house, with all that. So I was passionate about it, because I was in my school. I was a fit guy, played football and so on. But after work and everything, nothing. I couldn't sustain anything. The thing with this diet, Tim and Crystal, is that it's not a diet in the first place. I would say it's a lifestyle. Yeah. The thing with this is you don't have to break your back and run and do all these, intense things, which I didn't have the time. I would love to do it, but I didn't have the time to do it, because I was running my business, building the stuff, getting out of debt, doing all those, impossible things in life. And I didn't have the time. She didn't have the time. But in this way of eating and living, if you eat right and just do like 5-10 minutes of casual walk. In fact, they tell you not to do strenuous walk, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's not advisable to do strenuous exercise without changing the food, because that kind of increases the adrenaline, it increases the stress, and therefore creates hypertension and other associated stress related conditions, because without changing the food, we are trying to force the body to reduce, and that's just not possible.
So it's not like we are telling people to be lazy, but just that it's if you have minimal some kind of an activity but sustained with good food, then it really worked for us. I mean, it worked for me. And for me, the first few years, honestly, I tell you, I didn't do much exercise at all. The first 30 kilos that I lost was like no exercise. Then I started doing some for other benefits. But basically, the first, I think, close to 30 kilos, I lost just by the food.
Yeah.
So, exercise is good for fitness, but exercise is not the route through which one achieves weight loss. So, that's a point I just wanted to say.
I have a question too, because I actually eat a primarily plant-based diet. I don't stick to it completely. It's not 100%, but but I have gone primarily plant-based. And something that comes up with this topic often is healthy fats. So what would be considered healthy fats? Because we have to have the fats in our diet. What are some examples of that?
So healthy fats outside of a plant-based diets would be fats, animal fats, which would include suet from beef and lard from pork, and generally just animal fats. So when we cook with the fat, and when we buy meat, we buy it with the fat. So we cook with the fat. We cook the chicken with the skin and the fat under the chicken. So that is from animal sources of healthy fat. Plant sources of healthy fat would be from fruits. So you take olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. These are oils, fats, healthy fats that come from fruits. They are saturated fat. Both the fats, both animal fats and these three fats that I mentioned are saturated fat, and saturated fat is good for us. And also omega-3 fats, which are primarily available from fish and certain animals as well. So these are sources of healthy fat. The unhealthy sources would be from seeds, which go by the misnomer vegetable oils. Vegetables don't give oil. It's the seed that gives the vegetable oils, but they are the ones with a high proportion of omega-6 and therefore are not so healthy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I've done some reading and research and failed dismally to necessarily stick to this all the time, but I have lost weight using similar approach. And the thing that surprised me most was the whole vegetable oil thing, because there's an awful lot of propaganda out there about how wonderful vegetable oils and margarine, and actually you can almost trace when they were introduced for when a lot of this these issues started coming in, especially in the West. So could you talk a bit more about the risks of vegetable oils and like the traditional processed kind of oils?
The problem with that would be basically that they are polyunsaturated, and the ratio of omega-6 is very high, and we have to have a certain balance of omega-3 to omega-6, and when those increase, they are the ones that cause chronic inflammation in the body. And a status of chronic inflammation reduces the immunity in the body as well, which is some many LCHF experts and immunologists say that that's the reason the viral epidemic has been so bad, because it has greatly reduced the immunity of our human body. And chronic inflammation is a real problem. It causes aches and pains and doesn't let one be at their optimal best.
Like for us, this is I'm like a end customer. I don't know any of these things. I just know how good this stuff is because I experience it on a daily. I'm like this guy who says, I was blind, now I can see, kind of a thing. So for me, the biggest benefit, Tim, is that the energy that comes after this. I mean, we both are like 44 years old, 43 crossed. We are 44. And I work more than I ever worked in my life in terms of hours. But I'm able to get so much done. It's like the energy levels are so high. You're at your optimum physical best. I've never felt better in my entire life than this last few years when we've done this exercise in this whole way of eating. So I think from an end user perspective, if you ask me, the two big benefits are it's not difficult to do. It's not difficult to maintain, first of all. So which means it's long-term, it's sustainable, it's doable. I never gained that weight for the very first time. I lost the weight. I never gained it. Very first time. That's the biggest one. The second one is it is high energy and makes you feel much better without having to run like crazy and sweat and do all kinds of stuff. So that's like the end user perspective. So
could I explain to you the reason why he said it's easy to do and it's sustainable? I'd like to explain why. That would be the case. The reason other diets are not sustainable in the long term is because we're constantly fighting. It's like you use your willpower. If you have not lost weight, then something is wrong with you. You haven't used your willpower. You are not disciplined. You have eaten too much food. You. Because we're trying to fight against our own system. But this is hormonal. It's not got to do with the willpower. It's got to do with our hormones. Are the foods that we are secreting, that we are eating, that we are consuming, making us secrete hormones which make us hungry all the time, which make us put on weight? So that is the question we need to ask. We shouldn't be saying how many calories is this, but when we take a food, we say what hormone is this secreting in my body? If it is going to secrete insulin and leptin, then it's going to increase my weight. So no matter how much willpower I use, my hormone will win at the end, because it's not about my thoughts, it's about my body, and it's the biology of my body, which is why we found it easy, because we were working with our hormones, we were working with our body, so we were not fighting hunger. It was so easy, because we were satiated, we were not hungry, we had high energy, so it was really easy to maintain it. And bringing in intermittent fasting into the deal became so easy. Otherwise, previously, when I tried to fast for religious reasons, I used to be like, this is not happening. But this time it's become so easy. So when we work with our body, it becomes easy and sustainable.
Can we talk about carbs for a minute also? You said you eat a low carb diet. Can you explain what that looks like and why that's important?
Low carbohydrate would mean that the sources of our carbohydrate intake is mainly vegetables, and mostly non-root vegetables. Once in a while, we do take root vegetables like carrot or potatoes or stuff like that, but not like on a regular basis. But mostly vegetables, leafy vegetables, green leafy vegetables, and watery vegetables like squash and gourds and stuff like that. So that is our main source of carbohydrates. So we're not counting carbs and saying, okay, this pancake may have 15 carbs. Instead of that, we're saying the source of our carbs is vegetables. Now, the problem with most unhealthy carbs is generally that they come from seeds, which are refined, which go through a lot of processing. We take the seed, we remove the hull, we remove so many of those protein content, and we take just the main seed. And then in order to consume it, we have to grind it, then it becomes refined. So when those kind of carbs are absorbed into our body, they get released fast as glucogen, as glucose and glycogen, and therefore they create insulin resistance, because then insulin rushes in to take away the glucose from our blood. And when we do this over and over again, and insulin comes in over and over again, then we develop a resistance towards it. And then at one point, because of that resistance, we start putting on weight, because insulin and leptin are basically fat storing hormones. They don't want us to have high sugar rotating in our blood. So they need to remove it. And when they remove it, they store it as fat. So that is why low carbohydrates, a healthy source of carbohydrates, a lower number of carbohydrates, and a lesser frequency of carbohydrates as well is important. And a lesser frequency is possible when we include healthy fat.
Yeah.
Do you ever eat bread at all? Any kind of bread type carbohydrates?
Not now. After the LCHF diet, we don't eat breads, but once in a while we try out an almond flour bread, a flour or coconut flour bread. We try out those things once in a while, and we're fine with it.
Yeah, we're also actively trying to avoid wheat and sugar. Yeah, I think. Yeah, Tina will probably tell you.
Yeah, one of the reasons we absolutely avoid gluten is because I have a gluten allergy.
Okay.
Which I discovered only by chance after this, after discovering this diet. And at one point, I just thought lower number of carbohydrates is fine. So we used to include a bread or a rice-based dish once in a while. And then I realized that I have a skin problem called psoriasis, which really flares up. And I discovered this only after about 3 years into the LCHF diet, that was causing my flares up. And when I completely stopped the gluten and the wheat, I stopped having flares. And for him,
Yeah, it was interesting. So I don't have a gluten allergy. In fact, I don't have any allergies. But when I stopped wheat, I started realizing that it was actually helping me. So I realized that I didn't feel very comfortable whenever I had wheat. It made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, and also reducing the sugar. So I don't know. We started realizing that even though it's not about allergy, I think generally avoiding wheat is going to be good for us. And then we completely started avoiding, even with our kid, right from the time she was born. We've been trying to keep her off wheat, even though she's not allergic. Of course, once in a while we travel, there's only bread, and we both will have. But just generally trying to avoid wheat. And Tina has also been reading about generally why it's good to avoid gluten and wheat, and how it's a source of multiple issues that we don't even know. So
yeah, and the other big surprising food that I know people avoid is a lot of the fruits, because again, there's been a lot of propaganda about how healthy fruits are and all the rest of it. Could you give a brief guide as to what kind of fruits, if any, people should be eating on the low carb, high fat diet?
yeah, one thing to remember about fruits is one thing, fruit juice is another different deal. So because if you eat an orange, you would probably eat one orange, and it has a lot of fiber, so you really can't eat too much of it. And fiber has it mitigates the effects of sugar to a certain extent. But if we take a glass of fruit juice, then that would contain about at least 3 to 4 oranges. So that's the high load of sugar that would go into the body. And without the neutralizing effects of fiber, then that would cause a real spike in one's sugar levels. So that is to demarcate between the fruit and the fruit juice. And then when we go for fruits, I think once in a while it's okay to have a fruit. Instead of saying, okay, a fruit a day keeps the doctor away. That's just a fancy phrase that's been going around, but that's not true. So having a fruit once in a while really doesn't affect anybody much. And a low glycemic fruit would be better. See, there is a glycemic index, and now they're also formulating an insulin index that's coming up. So if we could get the insulin index and see the ones that are lower on the insulin index would be fine. But the ones on a higher insulin index, probably watermelon, or those are high on the glycemic index as well. Like watermelon is almost near to sugar itself. So those would be better avoided. But once in a while, I guess that's not a problem. And the way the body absorbs fructose is different. So people, sometimes they say, you have to have fruits and vegetables. That is also a whole different thing, because a fruit is not comparable to a vegetable at all. A vegetable is very different from a fruit. A vegetable doesn't have has very less or almost null fructose, whereas a fruit has quite high in fructose. And sometimes a fruit, they say fructose is may not show up in your blood sugar, but is metabolized directly into the liver. So it makes the liver insulin resistance, whereas it doesn't show up in your blood sometimes.
Like a fatty liver thing.
Yeah. So too much. So people end up having non-alcoholic fatty liver because of an increased intake of fructose-based and glucose-based foods. So a fruit low in insulin index would be ideal once in a while.
Yeah.
But examples would be probably papaya. Like at home, we have a papaya once in a while, a muskmelon, a guava. I'm not sure which of these fruits are common in different parts of the world. I guess there would be different ones. But a pear or an apple would be like really high in sugar.
Okay. Yeah, we like papaya here. We like to add like chili powder to it. At least here in Southern California. That's a Southern California thing. We like to add chili powder to everything. So.
That's very Indian as well.
Yeah, sure.
Is it?
We do that.
Yeah.
We put salt and chili powder.
Let's talk about another myth that, again, is to do with intermittent fasting. Because another regular myth, certainly in the UK, is breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Now, I've been skipping breakfast for about 6 months, and that's helped a lot with weight loss and keeping the weight from going back on when I've not been doing the low carb bit. So can we talk a bit about what intermittent fasting is and why it's important in the whole dieting, whatever diet you're on?
Breakfast is a good and important meal, but we have to understand what the term actually means. It's when
Yeah.
you're breaking your fast. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the morning.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why many children don't like, you have to force breakfast on them because you have to send them to school, but their body doesn't naturally want to eat in the morning, an hour after eating. So after waking up, I mean. So it's when you break your fast, when you choose to break your fast, is that is totally up to how you feel about it. So typically for us, I know it's called intermittent fasting nowadays, but we both have only, on most days, we have 2 meals a day. We have our breakfast around, say, 9 or 9:30, and dinner around 4 or 4:30 or 5. And that too, I sometimes force myself to have breakfast with him around 9, even though I'm not hungry, because that's the time we spend together. We've had a morning block of work. We get a break, and then we discuss what we've done early in the morning, and we discuss the day ahead. That's the only time we get. So sometimes, even though I'm not hungry, just to join him, I eat food. So it's not necessary to eat in the morning. You can just eat whenever you feel hungry, and that can be at any time. And typically our intermittent fasting is 16/8. So for 16 hours we haven't eaten anything, and we have 2 meals in the 8 hours that we are eating, and those meals are low carbohydrate, high healthy fat.
Yeah, I just want to jump in because for me, the breakthrough kind of came, the first 15 kilos was easy. So in the sense, out of I lost totally about 32 kilos. So, and that the 15 kilos was easy. I just did low carb, and then, I quickly started losing weight. And I think in about a few months' time, I lost that 15. And then things started slowing down a bit. So at that time is when, again, Tina started reading about this intermittent fasting, which means in some way, even it's almost like you're asking your body to use up the fuel that's already stored up, kind of a thing. I don't know how technically right that is. I'm just saying that. Tina can correct me, but basically the fasting really started taking me to the next level. In fact, I still need to lose a little bit of weight, and Tina's been telling me that's going to happen only if I up my fasting game. Yeah. Right now, I'm only in like that 16 hours, 2 days, or maximum 3 days thing. But I know some of what she's reading, people fast like, she's done 7 days. I've done 7 days once, but people do 11 days, 14 days, things like that. So the fasting is a fascinating thing. I mean, I really am amazed at how the whole fasting thing is. So I'm still exploring it, but Tina says it's incredibly helpful.
Can you explain that? Why is that? Does it cleanse your system, or what happens?
Yeah. First, let me tell you, because as he was explaining, that we found this actually, we're just learning this as we're going, because neither of us are experts. So when we did the LCHF, we just knew about only that for the first 3 years, which is why we didn't really lose too much after a certain point of time. It's 2 years. After that, as I was reading, I keep reading, and then I discovered material about fasting, and that's how we started the whole fasting journey. The moment I discovered it, I was like, I've got to do this, I have to try this. And then in the first 3 months of regular fasting, I had lost 8 kilos. Before that, over 2 years of LCHF, I had lost about 6 kilos. Over 2 years, I had lost 6 kilos. And then in just 3 months, I lost 8 kilos. And without any difficulty. The reason is, like he'd said, literally the body uses up fat that it has stored. It sounds so simple. It's almost simplistic. It's too good and too simple to believe, but that's what it is. When I was at him to lose weight. So before we found the LCHF way, and I'll be like, do something, don't eat too much, eat less. And, I'll be on his case, and he'll be like, I'm hungry. And I'm like, you have enough fat in your body. You won't die right now. You've got so much fat in your body. You're going to eat it. he'll be like, don't harass me, don't abuse me. It is, I used to be.
She'll be like, I'll put you in a forest for 30 days. Even if you can't find any food, you will be fine. You're not going to die. You've got so much fat that your body can feed on. But yeah, jokes apart, I think not just feeding, but it's also, cleansing your system.
Yeah.
Right?
So what happens is the body stores fat, plain and simple. And when we don't give food, there are two sources of fuel. One is what is already in the body, and one is external. The moment you stop the external, then the body starts accessing what is internally stored already. And so when we fast, the body starts using up its stored reserves of fat. That is one thing which helps in body weight loss. The other thing is, like you said, it cleanses the body, which is why they say most religions include fasting. Most major religions have some kind of fasting. They use God to bring fasting into people's way of life, and that's so beneficial because one is there is this concept called autophagy,
It's
for
like a
which
Nobel Prize or something,
the Japanese Nobel laureate around 5-6 years ago won that for a paper for his discoveries on autophagy and how the body is able to eat its own fat cells and therefore regenerates. So what they're saying is, one is it accesses stored fat. Second is it it regenerates. Third, they say, is it helps heal the body, because just like a vehicle, you send it to the service center once in 2 months or so because it needs they change the engine oil, they change the fuel, they check if everything is working, they check the carburetor and all that. So similarly, the body needs to have a rest. If we keep eating every day, then the digestive system and all associated systems are working non-stop every single day. And now with the advocated eat 5 meals a day, eat 6 meals a day, the body is overworked. Fasting gives the body rest. Fasting rejuvenates the body. It renovates the body. And people are now experts are saying that it helps heal. So old scars have healed. Old sicknesses are reversed. And there are many testimonials of cancers regressing and completely disappearing because people have gone and fasted. They've gone through long regimens of fasting and it helps them heal.
Yeah, I think one of our friends currently is going through a treatment, and I think you might also know him. So he is in fact, his treatment includes fasting. So he is, basically his doctors have advised him to go through fasting because fasting increased his rate of recovery. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
And you're not eating less, you're eating more healthy is what it sounds like.
Yes. And we're not conscious about the amount that we eat. We just we eat when we are hungry and we stop when we are full. There's no measurement and there's no counting calories
and this whole fat thing is also satiating. So you don't feel hungry often. But Tina also has this whole theory about the leptin. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So when we eat good healthy fats, it gives the satiating feeling. So it tells the brain you're fine, that's enough, so you can stop eating. And that is created by the hormone called leptin. So what happens, ironically, when we are on a high carbohydrate, low fat kind of food consumption is that leptin, there is a leptin resistance, just like there is an insulin resistance. You keep needing more and more leptin. And therefore, even when the leptin goes and says, that's enough, the body is not able to hear the leptin signals, just like it's not able to hear the insulin signals. And therefore, one ends up feeling hungrier all the time.
All the time.
So a person has eaten a meal, the body has stored it as fat, but the body is still starving. So it sends signals saying, I'm hungry, give me more food. So even though there is stored fat, the body is starving and is constantly feeling hungry.
I've been there. Exactly what that is.
And I used to feel angry as well when I was hungry. I used to lose my temper. They call it hangry. Hungry and angry, so it's hangry.
Oh yeah, I get hungry.
Yeah. Wake up in the morning and in 1.5 hours, I'm like, I'm hungry. And if I'm hungry, I have to have my food. Just go into some shop, buy something, eat now. and our days were centered around meals, our journeys,
Yeah.
our trips, our vacations, they're all centered around meals. Okay, next meal. Now we're not even thinking about food.
Yeah.
It's liberty, seriously. We
Yeah.
feel so free. It's free.
When I take a flight, I mean, those days I'd be like, what do I eat? What do I not eat? I used to be like free, all that. Now I'm like, I don't eat. It's like, it's period. You serve me whatever you want, and and interestingly, side note tip, it helped me with jet lag.
Yeah.
I can't prove it, but I mean, take scientifically, but it helped me with jet lag. Whenever I'm fast, I'm off, I'm able to recover time zones very quickly. So I don't know whether
That's interesting.
And because he's not eating, he prepares for his seminars and
all that
conferences
on the flight,
on the flight. And his mind is like, because he's fasting, his mind is like really alert.
Otherwise, you eat the carb and you want to hit the bed,
Because carbs make you tired. Unhealthy carbs make you really tired and make you want to sleep.
Totally. Like here in India, we eat a lot of rice. We used to eat a lot of rice, not now. And rice, you basically eat rice and you want to go to sleep. You don't want to do anything else,
So I have two more questions, and they are about either a cookbook or what you prepare for your meals. So 2 in 1 maybe. Do you have your own cookbook, or can we find recipes that you might prepare online on your YouTube channel? Or can you give us some examples of different things you like to prepare?
One reason I cook as I go, and I'm not the person to write a cookbook, like a recipe book. That takes a lot of work, and
not
I'm
happening.
like,
cooking is not a thing.
That's one reason I love LCHF and fasting. I'm like, today I don't feel like cooking. We are fasting.
So we're like, fasting, that's great. That works for a family. We don't want to cook, but really, I think in terms of food, do you want to say what we eat?
But ideally, we'd like to bring out something like that. So I'm trying to get people who I know who are on LCHF, but who also like to cook, who like to see. I don't mind cooking, but I'm not into documenting what I've done. You have to put the proportions and the measures, but there are people.
There are many resources.
People who are interested in doing it, so I'm trying to get them on board. And the reason why I wouldn't suggest meals to you is because I'm Indian, and our type of food is just so different from what you would eat. But then the basic building blocks are the same. So I could say that, and then different cultures could work from there. In the mornings, our first meal is typically we have eggs. So eggs cooked any which way you like. We can have omelets. We have poached eggs or boiled eggs or scrambled eggs. Any kind of egg that you would like, cooked either in butter or lard. Sometimes we make bacon, and then the fat that drips from the bacon, we use that to make our eggs. So basically, in the mornings we have eggs. Sometimes on a day when we are free and we like to cook an elaborate meal, and there's leftovers from the previous evening's meat or mince meat or something, then we make a stuffed omelette in which we put the mince and the meat. And typically an Indian meat dish would be quite spicy and have a lot of other ingredients. So it makes for a very filling and tasty meal for the mornings. But basically the building blocks would be eggs and bacon or ham or something like that.
So, Crystal, we're making you hungry. Your morning is just.
Well, no, I'm thinking I love Indian food. Where I live, we love diverse food. So I love curries and tandoori, and so I was curious. I was actually really curious.
We do eat a lot of curries.
We do that. So our second meal would be a meat-based dish and a vegetable dish. So that's it. So the meat-based dish would be most of it dry. Sometimes I make it in the oven, but sometimes Natchi likes a gravy or a curry. So I make a curry, and then we typically have rice with our curries, with our gravies. So instead of rice, we make a cauliflower rice, which is just blitzed cauliflower, grated or coarsely ground cauliflower. You can microwave it or just cook it over the pan for a few seconds. It becomes a bit soft, and then we treat it like rice, and we mix our curries and our gravies in that, and then that satisfies our curry craving, so to say. So basically that would be a second meal would be meat and vegetable. Again, we cook with healthy fat, with a lot of fat. And sometimes as we eat, we just grate some cheese over it, or we put a tablespoon of butter, or there's something called ghee, which Indians use, which is clarified butter. So we boil butter, and then any remaining milk solids get melted in that. That is a specialty in Indian cooking, ghee. So we pour that over our meal, so that increases the fat intake for each meal. So that would be our building blocks for the meals.
I also want to quickly jump in on the resources, because knowing the Western culture a lot since I've been in the US and UK, I think there are many resources out there. So you probably find what you want to look for, just for the audience, is what we call a keto cookbook. So most keto cookbooks would fall under LCHF,
yes,
right?
most keto LCHF meals. There are a lot of resources on the internet, books, YouTube channels.
Jason Fung is releasing one.
Yeah, even Dr. Jason Fung is now going to release a cookbook. But usually he comes out with research-based stuff. So this is the first time he's come out with a cookbook, and I'm like, wow. So because people...
She follows him a lot.
Yeah, people want recipes. People want... At the end of the day, they're like, okay, fine. Now, what do I do? Yeah. What do I cook? So I see that people need recipes. They need help to know what to cook. And there are a lot of resources on the internet for keto cooking.
Yeah. Well, I particularly like Jason Fung's Obesity Code book. I think that's probably the best one I've read in terms of a general, though he's very much into intermittent fasting is his thing as much as low carb. So
I think his recent book is about to be released, called the Dieting Code Cookbook. What is that? Dieting Code? Is that what it is? Diabetes Code?
Diabetes Code is already released.
Yeah, the Diabetes Code Cookbook is what he's going to be released.
He's going to release.
Okay. Where can our audience find your YouTube channel, your website? Where can they go find your information?
Yeah, YouTube is Indian LCHF. Indian LCHF, low carb, high fat. So that's our YouTube channel. And our website is indianlchf.com. So indianlchf.com will probably lead you to all the other things we do. It's our personal blog. It's not commercial. It's not a business or anything. We don't sell anything. It's more our story and a lot of Tina's well-researched, videos and so on. Some of the videos are so long, and it's all basically a lot of documentation and stuff.
The longest one is not released yet.
Oh yeah, she's working on one, so it's coming soon.
This one is several months long, is it?
How long is that?
That one is I've spoken for 1 hour, and I'm going to get a doctorate on an interview, and that might last about 20 minutes. So totally that would be 1 hour and 20. But typically most of my videos are about 7 to 10 minutes, except our joint podcasts, which are like
podcasts like 30,
40 minutes. But most of them are within 10 minutes, because I take, for me, my thing is, when I read, I find it quite difficult to understand certain things. So I read them over and over again, and I try to make myself understand the concept. And when I do that, I illustrate them. I take illustrations from other people. Most LCHF experts give illustrations, and then I further simplify them, and I further simplify them to myself. And then I say, okay, now I've had so much difficulty in understanding this. Why don't I put this out for somebody else so that they can understand it in an easier manner? So most of my videos would be trying to simplify the complex stuff so that people can understand it easily. So I would use animations and illustrations to help people understand. So
we also got some interesting things for senior citizens, because Tina's mom, after following this diet, she reversed diabetes completely after being on medication for 20-30 years. She's 74 years old, and she reversed, and she actually talks in one of the videos, and she says, if I can do it, you can do it. Kind of a thing. So we've got some of those videos as well. So
it's been a very popular channel, I know. And you said, did I hear you say you have a podcast too?
Yes.
Where can
It's on all channels. It's called Indian LCHF.
Oh, it's the same. Okay.
It's the same. Yeah. It's
INDIAN. Indian
not India, because I know in our screen we've got India.
I don't know why I put India and forgot the N, but there's an extra N. And also, it's on. If people scan the QR code, then
Okay,
that's got links to your website. But I cut directly from your YouTube channel and shoved them on the website. So,
Cool.
well, it's been great to have you guys on the show, and you can hang around after we finish the chat if you like. So, thanks a lot, and we'll see the viewers next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having
Bye.
us. Yeah,
Thank you
bye.
so much.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.